Serenbe is a place where people live, work, learn, and play in celebration of life's beauty. And we're here to share the stories that connect residents and guests to each other and to nature. This is Serenbe Stories. You might not see the connection between biophilic design and national security, but today's guest outlines how communities like Serenbe are imperative in our global defense strategy. I'm excited for you to hear our conversation with Colonel Mark Puck Mykleby. Puck talks about how he bonded with Steve over biophilia every morning at coffee while he was a fellow at Serenbe, how he was a catalyst for establishing the Biophilic Institute. And Puck also talks about the economics of sustainability and specifically how his consultancy is taking action to create more walkable communities. As Puck says, our smart growth at home can become our smart power abroad. But first, Serenbe Stories is brought to you by the Inn at Serenbe. The Inn is nestled in the rolling countryside of bucolic Serenbe, where guests can walk on the 15 miles of trails through preserved forest land, the wildflower meadow, and the animal village. You can relax by the pool, hot tub, or in rocking chairs on the wraparound porch. Play on the croquet lawn, swings, and in-ground trampolines. Connect with nature and each other, all while staying in luxurious rooms on the Inn grounds or within the community of Serenbe. Book your stay today at serenbeinn.com. How are you today, Steve?
I'm good. Looking forward to our interview discussion today.
I know. Today, Steve and I are talking to a very important figure in our lives, part of the national security and sustainability conversation. I want to welcome Puck Mykleby to Serenbe Stories via phone. This is our first phone interview. Puck, are you there?
I'm here.
Am I saying your name correctly, your last name correctly, Puck?
It's Mykleby.
Mykleby.
You can call me anything you want.
Okay, fabulous. Puck Mykleby. Well, Puck has quite a story that we're going to hear from him today. He's the co-founder of the Long Haul Capital Group, which catalyzes, supports, and propels walkable, sustainable communities. He also talks about that as the future, not only for the United States, but the world. Puck is also a graduate of the Naval Academy. He has a master's degree in both military studies and national security studies. And during his time in the Marine Corps, he served as the Special Strategic Assistant to the chairman in the Office of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. Quite a mouthful, Puck. And when he was there, he developed the national strategic narrative that said sustainability is what's needed to really become the country's national focus if we're going to face the challenges of the 21st century. But Puck, my first question that I ask everybody is, how did you come into our world? How did you first meet Steve and Serenbe?
By your world, are you talking Serenbe? Or are you talking about sustainability or?
That's a great question. I'm specifically talking about Serenbe. How did you first come to us? I know you were a fellow back in what, Steve? 2012.
2012.
Okay, great. Was that your first introduction to Serenbe, or how did that whole thing come together?
It was definitely my first introduction to Serenbe, and we can thank the fighting Phyllis Bleiweis for making that connection.
Wonderful.
I had met Phyllis, I believe it was at CNU 18 when it was in Atlanta. I believe that's where I first met her. And with Phyllis over a martini, I'm sure it was, just started chatting. And next thing I know, she had invited me to come to Serenbe.
Right. And CNU was the Congress for the New Urbanism. Is that correct?
That is correct. That is correct. And I was just speaking there based on the work that I had done. By this time, I was retired from the Marine Corps, but it was based on the work that I had done at Special Operations Command and then for the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. And Phyllis just thought it would be a good idea for me to come and visit Serenbe and talk to the folks there, and that's where I met Steve.
And so Phyllis was chairing our Fellows program, to where we invite interesting people who are writing a book or in different places in their career, to spend some downtime just hanging out here.
Right. And did you do a talk, or did you meet people while you were here, Puck? What was your interaction with the residents?
Yeah, it was all of the above. I gave, I think, just one presentation about the work that I'd done for Admiral Mullen when he was the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff around a document that me and a Navy captain, I was a Marine colonel at the time when I was in the Pentagon, but the Navy captain, Wayne Porter, had written called the National Strategic Narrative that bottom line said that sustainability needs to become our grand strategic national imperative if we're going to face the challenges, not only the challenges of the 21st century, but be able to grab onto the opportunities present in the world and get back to a place of leading from a position of opportunity and not having such a, what I would say, a masochistically nostalgic focus on threat and risk.
Interesting.
And Puck, it's always interesting to hear you tell the story on the day you got the call to show up at the Pentagon for this work. Share the short version of that.
Sure. I was actually working on strategy for Special Operations at Special Operations Command, global strategy. This was 2007 to 2009. And we just took a fundamentally different way of approaching strategy rather than a really linear approach. We took a more systems-based approach. And the things that we focused on were really came out of from the commander of Special Operations Command at the time was a four-star Navy admiral named Eric Olsen, and the guidance that he gave my team was to figure out how to get out in front of the sound of the guns. I just want to say that again because it's really important, not only in terms of an insight, but also for me just personally and professionally. But get out in front of the sound of the guns. In other words, try to figure out how Special Operations Forces could go out and shape the environment so we wouldn't have to go fight. And that was really interesting. And so that led us in a different direction, not only to look at the world more from a systems-based view and not from a control and power kind of view, but more as a participant in an ecosystem. And we started looking at things like urban design, regenerative agriculture, female health and education, anything that we thought would be really catalytic at the tactical level that would have large systemic and strategic catalytic impact. And Admiral Mullen in 2008, who was a new chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, he came down to Special Operations Command. We gave him a little dog and pony show, a little briefing on what we were doing, and he liked it. And then all of a sudden, this guy named Wayne Porter, Navy captain, who had long time been Admiral Mullen's personal staff, really brilliant guy, he gave me a call and just said, "Hey, Admiral Mullen told me to contact you." And so I talked to Wayne a bit. Next thing I know, in July of 2009, I got a call that said, get your butt up to the Pentagon because this is coming from Wayne. You and I are going to figure out a new grand strategy for the country. And so next thing I know, I was grabbing my sea bag and I was up in the Pentagon, a place I was really good at avoiding. But there I was. And it was, I got to say, it was other than commanding Marines, it was one of the best experiences of my life just because Admiral Mullen is just such a incredible guy, just incredible guy. So it was a real honor to work for him, especially on a project that big.
And so was that 2 years, as I remember, that you were at the Pentagon working on this and then filed a report?
Yeah, it was. It was only supposed to be 2 months, and it ended up being 2 years. So there you go. But yeah, I got there in July of 2009, and a month later, we had written a national strategic narrative. So in August of 2009, I thought my job was done. And but given what we were saying, that it really wasn't in the realm of the military, quite frankly. It wasn't the job of the Joint Chiefs of Staff really to dictate, and it's not just, this really great document called the Constitution. The military doesn't dictate domestic policy. It doesn't dictate any policy, as a matter of fact. But we were really trying to make a call that we really had it wrong, that this focus on threat and risk and really wasn't the direction our country needed to go, that we needed to get back to being a land of opportunity, and we saw sustainability both from a national security perspective, but also from an economics, and I would say a prosperity perspective, that's the direction we needed to go. New systems of food, water, energy, built environment, education, industry, to really take on the big challenges that we face, whether they're climate change, whether they're social dysfunction, issues of equity, and quite frankly, fiscal and economic issues. We really needed to start moving in a different direction. But given the fact that it was coming out of the office of the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, there were a lot of political sensitivities there. So Admiral Mullen really liked what he saw, what we were talking about, but there was a certain hesitance to proclaim it, given that that was really the responsibility of our civilian political leadership to come up with those kind of ideas and direct action. So 2 months turned into 2 years of trying to get Washington, D.C. to do something different.
And then in summary, did you make a recommendation to Congress?
We never made a formal recommendation to Congress. In fact, we weren't allowed to go talk to any political folks until just after the new year, 2011. And Admiral Mullen sent us over to see Congresswoman Jane Harman, who is a Blue Dog Democrat out of California and a longtime friend of Admiral Mullen. And so he sent us over to talk to her. We were supposed to have 15 minutes with Congresswoman Harman, and that turned into about a 2-hour conversation. And she loved what she saw. She loved what she read, and she was pretty fired up. Unfortunately, she was retiring from Congress, but when she got over to head the Woodrow Wilson Center in D.C., she took our narrative and she launched it into the public domain from there, with Tom Friedman emceeing it and had a gallery of folks debating the merits of the paper that we had written.
What am I remembering about the National Defense Act of 1947 that you all said needed to be adjusted, or am I thinking of something else?
No, you are. I mean, it was NSA, National Security Act 1947, was basically recognizing that the grand strategic challenge facing our nation was the rise of communism, the Soviet Union. And so we fundamentally restructured, particularly our national security apparatus, to take on that challenge. So that's where the actual Department of Defense was established, the CIA was established, all the instruments that we used to take on the Soviet Union under George Kennan's concept of containment that he put forth in 1946. So we had this grand strategic concept of containment, and then we created a national strategic construct under NSA 47 to take on that challenge. And there were subsequent modifications to the National Security Act over time. But what we found out after the Soviet Union collapsed, our country never did a reset. We never said, okay, what's the next thing? I mean, history moves forward, our interests move forward, and we just kind of accepted that old Cold War construct that was basically leveraged force and power to pursue our interests, to pursue our national interests of what we call prosperity and security. It no longer fit the world that we face anymore. But we kept doubling down, and I would say we still are doubling down. If you just look at the recent budget, we're almost up to we're over $750 billion all in on just our defense budget. Meanwhile, we're cutting things like the EPA, we're cutting things like even our State Department, our funding to our diplomats and our foreign aid. Education. These are the challenges that we face in the 21st century are no longer just military. There are security challenges. I'm a Marine all day long, and I mean there are people out there that need to get headbutted into submission, but that can't be our go-to position in the world. The world is screaming for leadership to try to figure our way forward so that the human beings can thrive as well as our planet can continue to flourish. So that was our perspective. It still is my perspective. And this nation needs a big wake-up call, particularly what's going on in Washington, D.C. today. It's only gotten worse. It hasn't gotten better. So my time in Washington some 10 years ago.
So, Monica, you can imagine when Phyllis said there's this interesting retired Marine that you should have coffee with, I said, sure, Phyllis, whatever you say. But after the first coffee, I could hardly wait for more. And so Puck and I had coffee almost every morning during his stay here. And as Puck learned about Serenbe is when he said, what you're doing here is literally an act of national defense. And as I shared many of the things that we wanted to do, and one of it was to create a campus for university students from really around the world to come for a semester away in environmental planning. And this would be part of an entire movement to also educate or create a think tank for educators and our urban planners in the United States. I was calling this at the time, the working title was the Green School or something like that. But because of Puck's encouragement, we launched the Biophilic Institute. That really wasn't the name at the moment. We worked on the name, but it was Puck's encouragement to do this. And Puck said, if you'll do it, I will be the vice chair. And through these years, Puck has remained the vice chair of the Biophilic Institute as we move forward to actually make some of these things happen.
No, that's incredible, Puck. And did you have any idea when you came here that this would be sort of this long-term relationship that you had?
No, absolutely not. I mean, I just thought this was, okay, another speaking gig. I mean, I mean, who doesn't love Phyllis? So
sure.
You do it, as Steve said, you do anything just because she tells you to do it. But to me, the most beyond just meeting the great folks that are residents at Serenbe, the fact of the matter is that when you can physically see, touch, taste what Serenbe is about. It's that really visceral connection to something that is special. But to think, but that it's just not, it doesn't have to be just Serenbe. That this is a pattern of design. This is a pattern of living. It's a pattern of community that there is zero reason why any community can't take those principles and apply them. And that's what really drew me, is that the scalability of the design logic, it tracked directly to what we were trying to say in the National Strategic Narrative when I was at the Pentagon. Because the fact of the matter is what we're talking about in terms of a macro global impact that the United States could have is that maybe this isn't the best, most current language. I really don't care. It's just that our smart growth at home can become our smart power abroad, because these conditions of community, these conditions of sustainability, these conditions of just civic connection and civic responsibility are global in nature. You can have your own country. I'm a firm believer in, you need to be proud of your own nation, but we still share the same planet, and we still have the same issues, and we still have the same problems, but we still have the same opportunities. And if we don't grab them, we don't design. If we don't grab onto them, we recognize them with a clear-eyed vision towards the future and what kind of life and world we want our kids and our grandkids to live in. If we don't act upon it now, all current trend lines show that we are really we are being future eaters. We are consuming our kids' future and our grandchildren's futures just simply because we won't do the work to shape their world. And that, and I hate to, I'm sorry I'm going off on a rant on this, but this is important. The fact that Serenbe exists, that you could take these basic design principles and create it and make it real and see the clear manifestation of it just in the way that citizens treat each other and how engaged they are. That's a really powerful, powerful message that our country used to have. I mean, Tocqueville wrote about it in Democracy in America. Those ideas and those designs are not lost. Serenbe manifests that in real form today in 2019, and it's something we ought to be grabbing onto and scaling and propagating, not only across the country, but across the world.
No, I mean, obviously thank you for those kind of words. And we really obviously really agree with you. And I think we talk about all the time, how do we connect people with each other and nature? And I think you've articulated that in a really beautiful way. I know that once that all of the research that you did, and then, all the work that you presented to the Admiral and then to Jane Harman, you were then, once it was declassified, I believe you were able to turn it into the book that I mentioned earlier, The New Grand Strategy. Can you talk a little bit about that? And then, really maybe what you feel like the impact that has had over the past 10-ish years? And I think maybe you were at a think tank for a minute too. Can you talk a little bit about that and where you felt like you got some traction, and where is there opportunity for all of us to think about continuing to push that message forward?
Yeah, sure. Well, first of all, what we did for Admiral Mullen, as a matter of fact, all the work they did at Special Ops Command, none of it was classified.
Oh, okay.
None of it was because these are common conditions.
Okay.
That I think was part of the strength of it. It wasn't a secret squirrel kind of thing. It was just, in my mind, it went out. It was common sense. It's basic God-given organic design. Whatever the cool word is now, integrative design or
right.
Biophilic design, whatever. It's just basic common sense. I mean, how systems are supposed to put together. I mean, hell, Darwin wrote about it at length. It's amazing that Darwin, it wasn't about survival of the fittest. It was about, if you remember, he wrote about a spring bed and how every organism in that spring bed had a role to play to make that a vibrant biosphere.
Right.
And that was the logic that we were using, is how can we be the best contributor to this system that we belong in,
right?
That we happen to be in.
And then did the Woodrow Wilson Institute publish that, and is that still available online, your actual paper?
Yeah, it's still online. If you just Google National Strategic Narrative, it'll take you right to the Woodrow Wilson Center website and the documents there. I mean, the documents itself that we wrote was purposely not prescriptive in nature. I mean, it's not a strategy per se. It was just trying to, again, catalyze action in D.C. And the reason why we weren't prescriptive is because we were very aware and clear-eyed by the fact that we were in the military, particularly the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, that we weren't going to cross the lines of the Constitution and start trying to dictate policy or strategy when it was so heavily focused on our domestic condition and our domestic requirements. And so this was truly the realm of civilian leadership.
Right.
I will say, try to get to answering I think what was the basic question is that, we tried really hard to get the civilian leadership to grab it. Now, the principles at the time were obviously President Obama, Secretary Clinton, Secretary Gates, and Admiral Mullen. All of them had a common worldview, and dare I say it, they actually liked each other. They all got to hear about the principles that we were pushing. They liked it, and yet we still couldn't get anything done. And that's not a dig on them. That's just the nature of our Washington political environment. I got immensely frustrated, so I retired. I just said, this is too big of an idea to let it languish in D.C. and really set sights on, okay, how could the private sector be the catalyst for these principles? How could the private sector lead and have, create the parades so that the government can jump in front of it? So that's what I did. So after I retired, went to New America Foundation for a couple of years, and we were picked up by the business school at Case Western Reserve University to develop these ideas, and that's when we wrote the book where we really examined the economics of sustainability. Are the economics anything, ironclad? No, nothing is. But demand and supply, I mean, all these basic Adam Smith principles, they're all in play for us right now, and we have plenty of capital to juice that. It's just that right now we've got really antiquated policy is what I would say. And the most significant, at least in my mind, is that we still are incentivizing drive-through to qualify suburban sprawl growth. It's amazing. Even though all the data is in, the fiscal data is in on how that's unsustainable, and not to mention environmentally, it's unsustainable, and social dislocation, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So that's why, even at Case Western, going from the military where you're very action oriented, then to a think tank, which was nice. Don't get me wrong, it was a great opportunity. And then going to the academic world, which was nice. Don't get me wrong, but none of them are action oriented environments. And I don't really want to be part of a think tank. I want to be part of a do tank. And that's why me and my business partner for a long time, since 2010, Patrick Doherty, we decided to stand up Long Haul Capital Group as a way to bring capital to not only catalyze but support and propel more walkable, sustainable communities, because we really see that as the future, not only in the United States but around the world.
Tell me a little bit about, because I think that's a really interesting point, that I think, well, I'll speak for myself, but I think many of us feel like the government is not the answer. And so where can we turn for action and doing? And so tell us a little bit more about Long Haul Capital, like what kind of success or what kind of projects have you been proud of there?
Long Haul Capital, we created that so that we could catalyze walkable communities. And as we see that, there are three basic components to making that happen. Number one's in the mortgage side of the house is right now, 50% of the investment goes into about 1% of the land mass in the United States is considered walkable. That's an enormous, and so there's an enormous price premium on that walkability. And so we're cracking the code on the mortgage side of it to not only open up the credit box, but all of a sudden also incentivize folks to start buying homes in more walkable places, which, oh, by the way, according to the National Association of Realtors, 60% of Americans seek the attributes of walkability in the next housing purchase. And again, only 1% to 2% of the land mass is walkable. That's kind of weird. So there's a big disconnect between supply and demand. The second thing is, how do you create more walkable communities? Well, we look at that not only from a need to reduce our carbon emissions and reduce the number of cars on the road and burning fossil fuels, but also because they will catalyze those communities. So we also invest in rails, particularly streetcar and light rail systems. And where there's a transit stop, the quarter-mile radius around that is an opportunity to create more walkable, dense communities. And then the third thing is, once those things are being created, you have to be able to support them with the types of infrastructure that makes sense, mostly district-level infrastructure, whether you're talking about energy, water, connectivity systems, both in last-mile mobility, but also digital connectivity systems. So investing in those things that allow those walkable communities to thrive in a 21st century context. And so that those three basic components are what we built our business model around. And so we're working on several different projects. We can or not get into those, but I mean, we're cutting our teeth in a place out in Portland with OMSI, the Oregon Museum of Science and Industry. We're looking to try to get a streetcar system up and running in Cleveland. And then so the district infrastructure thing is on OMSI. And then we are, what we're really mostly focused on right now is cracking the code in revitalizing the mortgage industry, particularly using a fintech solution that is focused on walkability. So that's what we're doing right now, and really provide transparency, consistency, most importantly, directing a huge volume of money that goes into the mortgage industry to really have a strategic impact on the way we live our lives in the United States, and leveraging the mortgage industry to do that.
That's interesting, but all with the vision of the urban walkable environment, which makes so much sense. I had no idea those statistics are kind of wild. The supply and demand is so off.
And so we're really keeping an old system on life support with really bad fiscal and monetary policy. Right. It's crazy. Yeah, it really is. But the cool thing is that a place like Serenbe cracks the code, not in a theoretical sense, but in a real physical sense. And I'd also throw in one of the things, and Steve is probably going to tell me to shut up about it, I think one of the most fascinating things about Serenbe is soil reclamation. As boring as that is, I mean, that is, well, some people it's boring. To me, it gets me all lathered up. I mean, it's just, talk about something. If you could take that science of soil reclamation, you start applying that to some of the more distressed urban environments across country. I'm thinking about Cleveland. I'm thinking about places like Detroit. Just think about what a game changer that would be in terms of wellness, in terms of solving food desert issues, or just having kids grow up with a fair shot without having to deal with lead in the soil, et cetera. And just as a little factoid, a lot of focus on Flint and the water lead content in the water in Flint, Michigan. If you and it's not a direct analogy, but I mean, just work with me here. But if you could do an equivalent comparison, water, and then the soil of Cleveland. The soil of Cleveland has 3 times more lead in it on a comparative basis. Just the soil in the urban environment in Cleveland. Now, just imagine what that's doing to kids. Just imagine what that's doing to wellness, not just public health, but long-term wellness of the various underserved communities here. I mean, that's a pretty simple thing that you could do, is just start treating the soil. And guess what? urban kids getting connected to Mother Earth through dirt is probably a really cool thing to do.
Well,
Puck, my opinion.
I have been listening, and Rodale Institute has announced now that they're going to put their Southeastern Research Center here. And as you know, they've been the leaders in soil and organic foods. So we're continuing to listen to you and put into practice demonstration areas.
And that's what I love about Serenbe. It's not about, let's talk about it, let's see what could possibly happen. It's just like, okay, that's a good idea. Let's go do that. That's what makes Serenbe special.
And then connecting that, I just got back from a weekend with Children in Nature Network and with another friend of yours, David Orr.
Great American.
Yeah. Have you seen the galleys for the new book he's doing?
No, I have not. No, I have not.
A whole nother conversation we'll have.
Yeah, well, that's coming out in February. So all focused on democracy. And I think one of the quotes from it is like, we basically can't save the planet if we don't save democracy.
Yeah, that's a little bit on the front of my brain right now, everything that's going on. So, but as that's what's amazing with David Orr. I don't think the guy has a better shot at not breathing than he is to not write a book. It's just amazing how many books that guy can crank out. Mm-hmm. And it's all great stuff.
Mm-hmm. Do you see anybody, Puck, and I know, you already said, we're sort of all looking for somebody to shine a light and really speak the truth, right? And I know we're having this really great conversation, and Serenbe is a great example, and I think your book is a really great place to start thinking about and be more thoughtful. But do you see leaders or places or nonprofits or that are doing the good work, or that we should be looking into or following or supporting?
Yeah, mayors.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because mayors can't BS their way around problems the way they could in a state capitol house or a national capitol. Mayors actually have to walk the street and look people in the eye and, make hard decisions on priorities and resources. But they also see the real ramifications of things that, other policy makers can ignore.
Mm-hmm.
Specifically like climate change and stuff. Look at Pittsburgh. I mean, Pittsburgh's a great example of what can happen. But just across the board, mayors get it. County council members, for the most part, get it.
Mm-hmm.
And you know what? Ideology is a really convenient thing when you don't have to actually do anything. But the pragmatic policy that has real impact on people's lives day to day, and have that level of accountability, which equates to walking down Main Street and having someone stop you.
Right.
And they're at your actual neighbor. I mean, again, I go, pointing back to what de Tocqueville talked about, the Americans traditionally have not waited around for someone to tell them what to do. They just see a problem set or they see an opportunity and they just get on and figure it out. And I think at the city, town level with mayors, that's where we see real action.
Great.
And I mean, I do believe on the private sector, there are great entrepreneurs out there that are trying to do the right thing, investors that are trying to do the right thing. We just have to figure out how to scale it. And I think the scaling factor would start with maybe at the state level, which you see happening in various states. But at the end of the day, once you start getting to the level of states and at the national level, it's going to as Eisenhower said, it's going to require a knowledgeable and informed citizenry to make sure that our instruments of government are acting in a manner not only commensurate with our values, but are also delivering on our enduring interests of prosperity and security. And that, to me, I know I focused on mayors, but I have immense hope in our citizenry that there'll be a wake-up call, and that just won't be about the economy, stupid, because right now we're just on our heroin high in terms of the economy. Well, we've got a big, huge train coming our way.
I know.
And it's not going to feel good when it hits. But hoping that our citizenry will wake up, have a moral awakening, but also, have a functional awakening about what it's going to take. And it may take some sacrifice. Get over it, America. Suck it up.
Yeah.
We've got some work to do.
Yeah, no, I
don't
agree.
even know if that answered the question, but man, that felt good to say. So thank you. It's like a therapy session.
Oh, good. I like it. That's what we're here for. I think that's a great answer. And I mean, and we talk a lot about what can you do? And I think there's a lot of fear or apathy, or there's like confusion. So I just want to put my head in the sand. But it is really like each of us has the power to make change. And like even just back to economics, the pocketbook, right? We can make change by how we purchase things, how we eat, where we choose to live. We do have a lot of influence. And so really being considerate about being informed and making thoughtful decisions, I think, is a huge part of it. Steve, do you have anything else to add about your relationship with Puck? Or Puck, do you have anything else interesting you want to tell us that you're working on outside of Long Haul? You doing another book by chance?
Oh, me writing another book? Probably never. That was, I won't tell you my analogy because it's kind of not it was just, for me, I like to draw cartoons.
Okay.
I'm not, it's always difficult for me to write, but, okay. I just keep thinking, and it's important to constantly, be perennially curious. And one of my biggest reasons for hang-ups with writing a book is that it just seems so dang final, and when you haven't figured everything out yet. So it's hard to write something down when you know that it isn't really quite right yet. So that was a long-winded way to say no, not going to write a book.
Well, Puckett, I know your son is now how old?
He's 19, and he's a sophomore at NYU Tisch at film school.
Oh, wow.
So proud of him there, yeah.
And so it appears that the youth, being a little disgusted with our elder generation, are stepping forward in a way that I cannot remember youth doing. I mean, I remember the 60s, and it was more individual rights, whether, sexual freedom and various things. But this is a group really looking at the global issues. I guess they've grown up with it. And what are your thoughts on that movement and the voices coming forward?
Yeah, I just wanted to keep going. They're reminding us what democracy is about. After Parkland, what kids did, in rising up and to have their voices heard, it was just inspiring to me. Now, some people said, how dare those kids lecture us adults? Well, I said, well, you know what? Number one, they're absolutely right. Number two, we need to be lectured.
Yep.
We absolutely need to be lectured. And what better voice? I mean, it's their future,
right.
And I'm glad that they're voicing their concerns about their future,
mm-hmm.
And the best part about, coming out of such a horrible event like Parkland was the political awareness of those kids to say, listen, we may not be able to vote now, but we are going to vote.
Mm-hmm.
That was a great message that just cut right to the heart of the issue. And I loved it. I loved it. Brought tears to my eyes.
Mm-hmm. They're like, get ready. Mm-hmm. Well, and then we're recording this in December of 2018, and so we're going to date it. But, Greta is on the cover, is the Time Person of the Year, right? So that's an incredible statement. I was thrilled to see that. I think it was this morning.
Yes.
And that makes me very hopeful that topic will not go away. So.
And hopefully we see numbers in this next election to show that this generation is coming out to vote, because we've had a lot of apathy in the youth once they get the right to vote. And hopefully that's going to change to indicate that it is going to be a time of change.
Yeah,
absolutely. And if I could just throw one more thing, it's just, we're all, trapped from where we came. But I also have it's not about being in the military that there's any great, you don't have, you do get great insight, but it's not about that the military has the answer to everything. But I'm also very heartened by the fact that we've got a lot of young Americans, men and women, that served in, a lot of them in combat are now getting their political voice, and are joining, at any level of government, because that perspective of those that are in the military, it's about, first of all, it's about teamwork. It's about higher purpose, not about self, and it's about service. And so I'm also heartened by the fact that we've got a generation that really know what it means to serve and what it really means to put everything on the line to serve in all levels of government. So with these kids that are aware, with a generation that's been tested through a time of war, and with that perspective, I do think we're going to be able to turn the corner. I'm hoping we can do it in time to have real effect on these big macro global systems. But it is something that we should all take heart in and be hopeful for.
Yeah.
Puck, it's always inspirational talking with you, and it always makes me want to do more and do it faster. So thanks for all the work you're doing and chatting with us today.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Puck. Thanks for your time.
Thank you, and thank you for Serenbe and the Biophilic Institute. I mean, that's inspiring. It's real, and it's inspiring, so thank you. It was great talking to you guys.
All right. Thanks, Puck.
Take care.
Okay.
Bye now.
Bye-bye.
Yeah, bye.
Thank you for listening to Serenbe Stories. New episodes are available on Mondays. Please rate and review the podcast and make sure to email your questions for Steve Nygren to stories@serenbe.com. You may even get to hear them on the podcast. More details about episodes and guests are available on our website, serenbestories.com.